more. Widesight TV.
So Gail, first of all, how can we prepare for and plan the supply chain of the future?
Oh, that's a really big question, a really big question. I think the first thing we've got to set the scene a bit for is that there is such growing demand for offshore wind globally, that there's such a big scene set out there. So we've got to be really, really controlled in what we're doing. I've really got to think now, and because it's such a big picture, we've got to think about the education aspect, we've got to think about how we bring people into the industry, we've got to recognise that actually this isn't just about just the engineering roles. It's a whole sector that needs supporting. So from your back office functionality, from your finance and your IT and all the rest of it, we need a whole growth of people coming through that is really going to fulfill that role. So that's a big part of what we've got to do to plan for the future. And I think even more so, we've got to collaborate as an industry. This is where we've really got to work across the whole chain. So not just necessarily the supply chain, but the developers and the tier ones. And we've all got to really engage in that conversation and understand how we can work together effectively to deliver what's required for the future, because there's ambitious goals, not just in the UK but globally, and we've really got to be smart in how we approach this. So it's all about collaboration, it's all about communication, it's all about transparency, so we can all align ourselves in that way.
I'm really interested in what you said about it's not just engineers, we need a whole supply chain, and I think that particularly plays into the coastal communities narrative.
Sure.
Let's talk a bit about that. So how can we expand out the supply chain to actually be more inclusive in that way?
I think it's a really interesting point, because again, I think when you talk about offshore wind, people automatically assume it's these technical engineering roles that are required, but it's much more than that. And I think the levelling up agenda at the moment is going some way of addressing that. And if you think for offshore wind, again, it's the coastal communities that are most affected. So again, it's really trying to drive through apprenticeships, it's trying to drive through opportunities in local communities. It's some of the government grants that we've seen of late where there's competitions that are led and really focused on new opportunities coming to fruition. So some of those things are going to help, but we've got to make sure we are diverse, we've got to be inclusive, we've got to realise that actually to be as good as we can be, this diverse platform would be ideal, but also to achieve this ambitious goal, we've got to work together, and that's the only way to do so.
So you've mentioned a few things there. You've mentioned collaboration and you've mentioned some government initiatives and some organisational initiatives. What else do you think we can or should be doing?
I think it starts from all of us now, doesn't it? We have to start this conversation and really be effective in what we're doing. So it means that we're not just talking about it, we're actually taking action. So I think this is very much the likes of Renewable UK and the industry bodies, they're right in the centre of this. We need to take action now. There's ambitious plans, so we've got to do it from this moment to see that effect.
And to what extent do you think that we can do this in a way that supports the levelling up agenda that we're hearing a lot about these days?
No, but really good question. The levelling up agenda is all about that engagement locally and really sort of driving that through. So the way we can do it, and again, it's really focusing on where our organisations are based. It's looking at where we can get that talent and skill. I think the last year and a half has shown us through the COVID pandemic that you don't necessarily need your employee base right on your doorstep. So again, we've opened up society in a different way that's going to enable us to use that going forward. So we need to learn from COVID, we need to really sort of pull that through. So actually as we're going forward, we can have a much more diverse workforce.
Really interesting stuff there, Gail, thank you. I'm going to come to you now, Rebecca. So first of all, you're a fairly new entrant into the workforce. Tell me about your pathway into this sector.
So I started off when I was 18, started to do my bachelor's degree in oceanography at the University of Southampton. I then did a placement year while I was there at the Port of Dover for a year, so I worked as a hydrographic assistant. I then learned that I really liked that field of study, so I went on to do my master's degree in geospatial science, which specialised in hydrographic surveying. I did that at UCL for the year, and that was really great. It was really practical, hands-on, because it was run with the Port of London Authority, so I get to go offshore to learn Thanet Offshore Wind and London Array with the Port of London, and get really good experience processing subsea data, and also right in the heart of renewables, really offshore wind, and getting right up close to turbines. And I then obviously got into the graduate scheme and Global Marine Group, which I was really pleased about. I think OceanIQ definitely caught my attention first, because that is definitely the closest to my industry and my background. But yeah, I went through the interview process and now I'm on the graduate scheme. So I think which so far, like, I can't fault the graduate scheme, to be honest. I think, like, when I go into each placement, I think sort of what unique experiences I can get from each part of the business. So, like, with OceanIQ, all the route engineering and desktop studies, commercial aspects as well. And then for the engineering, obviously going offshore as well, those sort of unique experiences I can get from across the business.
I want to come back to that going offshore piece in a minute, but just tell me for a second, what are you working on at the moment?
So obviously the variety I get at the moment on the graduate scheme means that I can work in obviously the renewable sector, and then there's power and telecoms. So speaking for now, in the engineering department, I'm doing a lot of deck layouts, so for vessel mobilisation. So before a vessel goes out to do a job, albeit it be a wind farm job or a telecoms project, I'll sort of design the deck with all of the equipment and sort of all the plans for schedules of work and things. I do storyboards and things for all the projects. And then renewables, with OceanIQ I did a lot of renewables, all the renewable desktop studies, a lot of learning how from like this really in-depth knowledge from the specialists in OceanIQ with how to sort of design inter-array cables.
You've packed a lot in already, my goodness. So you've been offshore, obviously, and we all know that you don't get to go offshore before you've done your offshore training. Tell us all about how that was.
It was good fun. It was a good fun 3 days. Like, intense amount of theory, which is to be expected, but I think the best part was the practical sessions. So jumping in the pool, I remember the first time we got in the pool, I had to put on this immersion suit from head to toe in bright orange, and then jump in the pool from a 6 metre height in this, all in a row, just lining up, ready to jump in. And I did freak out a little bit at the beginning, but I jumped in eventually, and then just kind of explode into this giant life jacket, it's quite fun. And then we all sort of learned how to be safe at sea, really, if in an emergency. So we learned all these techniques to keep your body temperature warm, and then also jumping into life rafts, like invert a life raft if it turns around the wrong way, all sort of the provisions that are kept on life rafts. And then after that, obviously went on to the helicopter escape, which was an experience, definitely. So I think we did it 3 or 4 times, where we were a couple of metres above the pool and the helicopter would be sort of sunk into the water. The first one, you just sort of learn how to break the window of the helicopter open and undo your seatbelt sort of thing and jump in the life raft. But after that, the helicopter was sort of submerged into the water. So obviously you didn't have any sort of breathing equipment. You couldn't see unless you really wanted to open your eyes and look, but you had to sort of, again, escape the helicopter. And then the last time they actually reverted the helicopter, so it was actually capsized in the water, which is apparently common if a helicopter was going to crash. So that was a good experience. But yeah, things like firefighting as well, really, really good fun to learn. And meeting like-minded people as well. A lot of graduates I met who were going offshore for the first time, but also people who were very experienced seagoers, who gave us sort of their tips and tricks of what to do, being done it for 10, 20 years. So that was great to hear that from other people as well.
You make it all sound really easy. Tell me, I'm just intrigued to know, was there anything that when they first said you're going to do this, you thought, I can't do that, and then you did?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think a lot of people felt apprehensive, especially with the helicopter training. I think I'm going underwater upside down. I don't think anyone's favourite thing to do. So I was definitely apprehensive about that. And when we were doing the firefighting training as well, because we were in a scenario, we were in a container, we actually had smoke in the room, and it was pitch black. So that got the adrenaline going a little bit, just to make sure, all of my sort of face mask and everything was working properly, to go into a smoke-filled pitch black room. So, but that was good fun though. At the end, everyone got through it. So I think because everyone was doing the same things together, the nerves sort of went away, So
that's really impressive. Well, thank you for speaking to me.
Energy. Marine. Energy. Power. Widesight TV.